The rain pounded violently against the windows of Sonic's house, creating a dark, hypnotic rhythm that echoed through the empty halls. The wind howled through the trees like lost souls, and lightning ripped across the sky with an almost supernatural intensity. Sonic sat in his favorite armchair, trying to focus on a racing magazine, but his eyes kept drifting toward the security cameras placed around the property. The system had been installed a few months back, after a series of break-ins in the area. He had never thought he'd need something like that. He always trusted his speed to keep him safe, but times were changing and even a hero needed precautions. The monitor displayed 4 angles: the front entrance, the backyard, the left side, and the garage. Everything looked normal, just the rain distorting the black and white images now and then. Sonic sighed and turned back to his magazine, but a strange feeling nagged at him as if he were being watched. Then it happened. In the bottom right feed showing the backyard, a shadow moved. It wasn't the kind of sway caused by the wind in the trees, it was deliberate, calculated. Sonic dropped the magazine instantly, his instincts firing on high alert. He leaned forward, eyes locked on the screen. The shadow was gone. Must have been the rain, he muttered, though his voice carried less conviction than he'd hoped. He kept watching for a few more minutes, but nothing else happened. The cameras showed only the drenched yard, the swaying trees, and the fence line. It was nearly 2 in the morning when he saw it again. This time there was no doubt. A figure stood in the middle of the backyard, motionless under the pouring rain. The grainy feed and the storm's interference made details impossible to make out, but there was no mistaking it. Someone was there. Someone who wasn't supposed to be. Sonic's heart raced. Normally, he would have darted outside. His speed made him nearly untouchable, but something about that figure left him deeply unsettled. There was something wrong in the absolute stillness, in the way it just stood there, facing the house. He watched for 5 long minutes, waiting for any sign of movement, but the figure remained frozen, like a statue. Sonic finally stood, his legs trembling slightly. He tried to peer through the window, but the storm and the darkness gave him nothing. When he turned back to the monitors, the figure had vanished once more. Sonic spent the next 20 minutes pacing between the window and the security cameras, desperately searching for any sign of the mysterious figure. Part of him began to wonder if he had really seen anything at all. The cameras were old, the storm was causing interference, and he was tired. Maybe his mind was playing tricks on him. He decided to make a round through the house to calm down. He checked all the locks, doors and windows were secure, the alarm system was active. Nothing seemed out of place. When he returned to the living room, the camera screens were filled with static. What the hell? Sonic tapped the monitor lightly, but the interference lingered for a few seconds before the image returned. And then he saw something that made his blood run cold. Footprints in the backyard. They weren't normal footprints, strange marks as if someone had walked in circles around the house. The most disturbing part, they seemed to form on their own in the mud, one after another, as if an invisible person were walking right in front of the cameras. Sonic stepped back, his heart racing. Footprints don't appear on their own. It had to be an illusion caused by the rain and shadows. The phone rang. The sudden sound made Sonic jump, his body tense. It was 2:30 in the morning. Who would call at this hour? He hesitated before picking up. Hello? Silence. Hello? Who is this? On the other end, slow, heavy breathing, followed by a low, hoarse voice, almost a whisper. You shouldn't be alone tonight. The line went dead. Sonic stood frozen, the phone at his ear, trying to process what he had heard. His hands shook and a cold sensation spread through his chest. He hung up and checked the cameras again. The footprints had stopped right in front of the back door. The next hour passed in silent agony. Sonic couldn't tear his eyes away from the monitors, scrutinizing every pixel of the camera feeds. The rain had eased, but the feeling of being watched only intensified. At 3:15 a.m., all the lights in the house went out. Sonic found himself in total darkness, with only the faint glow of the security monitors. He tried the switches. Nothing. Even the emergency generator seemed to have failed. Perfect, he muttered, fumbling through a drawer for a flashlight, his fingers trembling. Then came the first knock. Tap, tap, tap. It came from the back door, 3 slow, deliberate knocks, as if someone were patient. Sonic froze, flashlight still unlit. The sound echoed through the house, amplified by the structure. Tap, tap, tap. Again. Same rhythm. Finally, he managed to turn on the flashlight and aim the beam at the back door. The knocking stopped. He approached cautiously. Through the glass, he could see only darkness and rain. No one was visible. Who's there? He shouted, trying to sound braver than he felt. Silence. He waited for a few minutes, but nothing else happened. Returning to the living room and checking the monitors, he almost dropped the flashlight. All 4 cameras showed the same thing. A figure standing directly in front of each one, its face blurred and distorted. "This isn't possible," he whispered. "For different people or the same one moving at impossible speed. Not even he could be in 4 places at once." The images began to glitch, alternating between the mysterious figure and static. Sonic pounded on the monitors in desperation, but nothing changed. Then all the monitors went dark. In near total darkness, Sonic tried to stay calm and think logically. Someone was clearly playing with him, maybe Eggman or another villain, some elaborate trick. But even rationalizing it, fear grew in his chest like a poisonous plant. The sound came from above, slow, heavy footsteps on the upper floor, deliberately moving from one room to another. Sonic aimed the flashlight at the ceiling, but the steps continued at the same rhythm. "This is impossible," he muttered. All doors and windows were locked. The footsteps stopped above the living room. Silence stretched, broken only by a new sound. Rhythmic scratching like nails on the wooden floor. Scratch, scratch, pause. Scratch, scratch, pause. Sonic grabbed a baseball bat stored in the closet and began ascending the stairs, each step echoing through the silent house. The scratching stopped as he reached the top. The upstairs hallway was plunged in darkness, doors closed like silent mouths. Sonic aimed the flashlight, scanning for any movement. Everything appeared normal, but the presence was overwhelming. "I know you're there," he said aloud, trying to sound intimidating. "I don't know what game you're playing, but it's over. Show yourself now." One of the doors, his bedroom, opened slowly. Sonic felt his stomach clench. There was no wind, no touch. The door simply opened on its own. He approached cautiously, bat raised, flashlight aimed. The beam revealed his neatly made bed, nightstand, and personal items. Everything was normal, except for the fact that someone was lying in his bed. The figure on the bed was turned away from the door, covered by the blanket. Only the outline of a body was visible, motionless. Sonic felt his throat dry as he approached slowly. "Hey!" he shouted, his voice cracking. "Get up! What are you doing in my bed?" The figure didn't move. Sonic stepped closer, bat ready, flashlight trembling in his hands. Hesitant, he yanked the blanket back quickly. There was no one, only pillows arranged to create the illusion of a body. Sonic recoiled, confused and terrified. Was his mind playing increasingly elaborate tricks, or was someone cruelly toying with him? Then he saw the mirror. The large mirror reflected the flashlight's beam, but something was wrong. Sonic approached slowly, his heart pounding. In the reflection he saw himself holding the flashlight and the bat. But behind his reflection, there was another figure, a dark silhouette that didn't exist anywhere in the real room. Sonic spun around quickly, flashlight raised. Nothing. He turned back to the mirror. The figure was still there, now closer. "What the hell?" he whispered. The figure began moving, approaching Sonic's reflection. In the real room there was nothing but him, yet in the mirror, something advanced with clearly malevolent intent. Sonic stepped back, unable to look away. The figure was almost touching his reflection, reaching out a hand made of pure shadow. Then he realized the horrifying truth. The figure in the mirror was mimicking all of his movements, delayed by a few seconds. When Sonic raised his left hand, the figure raised its right. When he leaned forward, the figure leaned back. It was like him, but inverted, corrupted, transformed into something sinister. Sonic bolted from the bedroom, descending the stairs 2 at a time. He had to get out of the house, no matter if it was a psychological attack, an illusion, or something worse. He rushed to the front door, hands trembling as he struggled with the locks. The first lock refused to move, the second as well, as if they had been glued or welded shut. Finally, the locks gave way, but the door wouldn't open. He tried the back door and the windows, all sealed from the outside. He was trapped. The realization hit him. This wasn't a prank, it was a carefully planned trap. Back in the living room, he considered his options. Maybe breaking a window. Then the monitors flickered back to life. All 4 screens showed him, standing in the living room with the flashlight and bat. But these weren't live feeds. They were recordings of different moments of the night, played simultaneously. On the first screen he was reading the magazine, on the second watching the backyard, on the third talking on the phone, on the fourth climbing the stairs. Someone had recorded every moment of the night. "Who is doing this? What do they want from me?" he shouted. The screens changed, showing the house from the outside. He saw himself through the window, illuminated by the flashlight. But there was something else. Dozens of figures standing around the house, all identical to the shadow he had seen earlier in the night, like silent sentinels. Sonic ran to the window but saw only darkness. Back to the monitors, the figures were closer. Then he heard his own voice. "You shouldn't be alone tonight." It was the same voice from the phone call, now recognizable. His own voice, distorted and processed, yet unmistakable. Revelations came crashing like waves against rocks. Sonic sank into the armchair, his mind racing to make sense of what was happening. His own voice on the phone, recordings of himself throughout the night, figures outside identical to the shadow. "No," he whispered. "This is impossible." But everything fit together in a terrifying way. The shadow in the backyard, the footprints forming on their own, the figures on the cameras, the person on the bed who wasn't there, the reflection in the mirror. They were all him. Sonic looked at his hands in the flashlight's beam, solid, real. He could feel the weight of the bat, the warmth of the flashlight, hear his breathing and his racing heartbeat. But what if? He slowly approached the mirror on the upper floor. The reflection looked normal, showing only him. When he reached out to touch it, his fingers met no glass. They passed through as if it were water. Horrified, he tried again, more slowly. His hand passed entirely through the mirror, emerging on the other side into an inverted version of the room. He wasn't looking at a mirror. He was looking through a window. The realization hit Sonic like an avalanche. He wasn't in his house. He had never been there that night. He was trapped in a parallel dimension, a distorted version of reality where the laws of physics didn't work normally. The cameras didn't show intruders. They showed the real version of him, living a normal night. The shadow in the backyard and the figures around the house were him, seen from impossible angles. "How?" he whispered. "How did I get here?" He descended the stairs, seeing the familiar house with new eyes. Everything seemed right, but details were off. Colors slightly altered, furniture in subtly different positions like a poorly retouched photo. The monitors showed the real Sonic moving through the rooms, holding the same flashlight and bat, repeating his movements. But there was a crucial difference. The real Sonic was followed by an independent shadow, sometimes behind, beside, or ahead of him. Then Sonic understood. It was himself, trapped in this mirrored dimension, projecting into the real world as a ghostly presence. Sonic spent hours trying to escape. He explored every corner of the distorted house, searching for cracks in reality or doors out. He found only mirrors, on the walls, ceiling, and floor, each showing the real house as interdimensional windows. Through them, he saw the real Sonic dealing with terror he couldn't comprehend. Footprints in the backyard, the phone call, shadows and figures, all reflections of the trapped Sonic trying to make contact. The more the trapped Sonic tried to escape, the more he terrified himself in the real world, feeding the dimensional prison. "There has to be a way out," Sonic murmured, staring at a mirror on the floor. It showed the basement of the real house, normally untouched. But something was different, a crack in the wall that hadn't existed before. In the distorted version of the basement, there was a door in the exact same spot, a door that definitely didn't exist in the real house. The door was black, smooth and pulsating without a handle or lock. It seemed to absorb the flashlight's light. Sonic hesitated, but the need to understand outweighed his fear. When he touched it, the door dissolved like smoke. On the other side stretched a black, pulsating corridor, filled with thick, metallic air, extending infinitely. Sonic walked until he reached a circular chamber. In the center, a chair identical to his own. Seated in it, another Sonic was reading a magazine. He didn't notice Sonic's arrival, motionless and absorbed. No sound, no reaction. He was like a statue frozen in time. On the monitors, Sonic saw a third version of himself, exploring another house, also terrified. The terrible truth began to form. There were more dimensions than he could imagine. There weren't just two dimensions, but an infinity. Each chamber held another version of Sonic, trapped in different moments of terror. Footprints in the backyard, phone calls, impossible mirrors. Each version unknowingly terrified the others, multiplying the distorted reality. In the center he found a different Sonic, awake, aware, looking directly at him. "Finally," said the figure. "One of the copies has made it here." "Copies? Who are you?" "I am the original," he replied. "You and the others are fragments of my psyche that gained form." The original Sonic explained. He had been testing an Eggman machine capable of manipulating mental reality. He wanted to create a safe world, free from constantly being a hero. But his deepest fears leaked. Fear of loneliness, persecution, and inadequacy. Each fear generated a new reality, creating new versions of him to experience the terror, a multidimensional maze of fear with himself multiplied infinitely. "So how do we stop this?" Sonic asked, observing the hundreds of versions of himself trapped in their own nightmares. "That's the problem," the original replied. "To undo it all, I would have to shut down the machine. But that would destroy all the alternate realities. They're just nightmares." "Yes, but real. Each version has thoughts and feelings. Destroying them would be genocide against ourselves." Sonic looked at the infinite trapped versions. An impossible choice. Leave them to suffer or destroy them to save the original universe. "There has to be another way," he murmured. "Perhaps," said the original. "But it would require a sacrifice. One version would have to permanently take over the machine, becoming the guardian of all realities." "I'll do it." The words left him before he could think. The original looked surprised. "You understand? You'd stay here forever, alone, surrounded only by terrified versions of yourself." Sonic thought of his friends, the life left behind, but looked at the trapped versions. Each deserved freedom. "I understand," he finally said. "But I can't let them suffer. If there's a chance to save them, I must try." The original nodded. "Are you sure? There's no going back." "I'm sure." The transfer process was more painful than Sonic had imagined. His consciousness expanded, connecting to all realities simultaneously. He could see through the eyes of hundreds of versions, feel their fears and terrors. It was overwhelming. For a moment, he thought his mind would shatter, but gradually he found balance, compartmentalizing each reality. With control of the machine, he began working. One by one, he calmed the realities. Shadows vanished, phone calls ceased, phantom footprints disappeared. Hours, or days, time was strange, passed, and each Sonic found peace. Some fell asleep, others walked toward dawns Sonic had created for them. Each reality became a small paradise, a respite the original had sought when creating the experiment. "You did the right thing," said the original Sonic, now at peace. "They're free from fear and terror. And you? I'll return to my reality. The machine will be destroyed, ensuring this never happens again. But you," he hesitated, "will stay here. It's the only way to keep everything stable." Sonic nodded. It was his choice and he had no regrets. The first days were the hardest. Loneliness weighed on Sonic like a heavy cloak. To distract himself, he explored the infinite realities under his control, tweaking small details to make the lives of his other versions happier. In one reality, he created a garden where a Sonic could run freely, without villains or responsibilities. In another, he populated the world with benevolent versions of his friends, ensuring that no version would ever feel alone. Each reality became a personal work of art, and Sonic began to feel a strange satisfaction in being both creator and protector. He discovered he could communicate with the other versions through dreams and intuitions. They were unaware of his presence consciously, but he could gently guide them toward joy. Months or perhaps years passed. Sonic established a routine, caring for each reality and maintaining peace. Slowly he realized he was no longer truly alone. During a routine visit, Sonic noticed something unusual. In the infinite garden, another version of himself had stopped and was looking directly at him. "I can see you," the other Sonic said softly. Sonic was surprised. These realities were supposed to be autonomous. "How?" he asked. "I don't know, but I feel someone running with me and the feeling has been growing stronger." Sonic understood. By caring for the other versions, he had created a real connection. They were not just projections, they were independent entities still linked to him. "You're trapped, aren't you?" the other Sonic asked. "I am," Sonic admitted. "But it was my choice. To keep you safe." "That's not fair. You sacrificed your freedom for ours." "And I would do it again," Sonic replied. "You deserve to be happy." The other Sonic remained silent for a moment, processing the information, then smiled. "You don't understand. We're not just your versions. We're part of you and you're part of us." "What do you mean?" "You're not trapped because you have to be. You're trapped because you believe you have to be. All these realities are expressions of you, your desire for peace, your need for adventure, your fear of loneliness. Controlling them doesn't require separation." Sonic began to grasp the truth. "You're suggesting that you can experience each life without abandoning your role as guardian. Not as a prisoner, but as a participant." It was an unprecedented possibility. All this time he had seen himself as separate, as an observer. But if they were part of him, he could fully take part. How would it work? "Try it," the other Sonic said. "Instead of just watching, participate. Run with me in this garden and see what happens." Sonic hesitated for a moment before joining the other in a run through the infinite garden. At first, the sensation was strange. He was in two places at once, both observer and participant simultaneously. Gradually, the two experiences began to merge. He was no longer divided. He could feel the grass under his feet, the wind on his face, the pure joy of speed, while maintaining his expanded consciousness and control over all realities. "This is amazing," he whispered, astonished at the freedom he felt. "And this is just the beginning," said the other Sonic. "You can do this in every reality. Live every life, experience every adventure, be every version of yourself." Sonic began to explore other realities. In one, he joined another version of himself on an epic adventure across alien worlds. In another, he sat on a quiet beach watching the sunset with dear friends. Every emotion was genuine, every experience real. The loneliness that had tormented him vanished. How could he feel alone when he was literally his own perfect company, multiplied across infinite possibilities? Months passed. Sonic found a balance between his responsibilities as a guardian and his need for adventure. Each day brought new possibilities, new worlds to explore, and new versions of himself to meet. Some of the other versions began developing multidimensional awareness, communicating with each other and sharing experiences and insights across the dimensional barriers. The experiment that had once generated terror and endless prisoners transformed into something entirely different, an expanded existence, where every aspect of Sonic's personality could be explored and celebrated. "You know," said one of the versions during an interdimensional conversation, "I think this is better than anything we could have imagined." "How so?" "In the original reality, you were limited to being just one person living one life. Now you can be infinite people, living infinite lives. Experiencing every adventure, every peace, every relationship." It was true. Sonic had achieved something unique. The ability to live multiple lives simultaneously, each as real and meaningful as any singular existence. During one of his adventures as a space explorer, Sonic sensed someone trying to access the dimensional nexus. He returned to the central chamber and saw Tails emerging from an unstable portal. "Sonic!" Tails shouted, running toward him. "I knew you were alive." "Tails? How did you find me?" "It took months," Tails explained, emotional. "I studied the wreckage of Eggman's machine, analyzed the energy patterns, and finally located you." "But how did you build a portal?" "With help. Eggman felt bad about what happened and wanted to help bring you back." Sonic felt a wave of emotion. His friends had not given up on him. "Tails, I have so much to explain." Sonic spent hours explaining to Tails about the multiple realities, the infinite versions of himself, his role as guardian, and the possibility of living in all of them simultaneously. "So you can come back home and still continue here?" Tails asked. "Exactly," Sonic replied. "I can be the Sonic you know and also all these other versions. It's the best of both worlds." "But is that what you want?" Sonic hesitated. Part of him wanted a simple life, but he couldn't abandon the other versions. They're real, Tails. They deserve to exist. "And what if there's a third option?" Tails showed a device, a dimensional stabilizer he and Eggman had developed. "If it works, all realities will become independent. You won't have to be the guardian anymore. So I could choose where to live or visit other realities whenever I want?" "Exactly. Freedom for you and all the versions while maintaining connections with them." 6 months after the mirrored realities incident, Sonic returned to his original world. The dimensional stabilizer worked. All alternative realities became independent universes, and he could communicate with them through Tails' device. Occasionally, Sonic visited other realities, but most of the time he was content being the original Sonic with his friends. "Don't you miss living all those lives?" Amy asked. "Sometimes," Sonic replied. "But I've learned that in the end this is my home. You're my family." He realized that his greatest fears, loneliness, helplessness, being trapped, were about not accepting all parts of himself. By integrating all versions, the nightmares disappeared. "Now I can face anything," Sonic said. "I'm no longer running from myself, I'm running with myself." And so, he felt complete, with multidimensional adventures always accessible through the communicator, yet content with his original life.